So we're going to start with our affirmation again. And you got a little card in your bulletin today, which was the brainstorm of the girls in the office. And I love this. So you can take it with you. You can put it in your car, wherever, to remind yourself. But let's share together. I am available to more good than I've ever experienced, imagined, manifested, or expressed before. And as we go through this series, that's going to come to mean something deeper and deeper and deeper to you. We are in the midst of a series based on the Life Visioning book by Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith. And one of the scriptures that I absolutely love is from the Gospel of Thomas. And it's, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And for me, this is really kind of the basis of this whole journey. And the idea behind this bringing it is that we cover our true nature. And we have not allowed that true essence of Godness to express as us. And when we cover that nature, and especially as I'm going to talk about today with the victim consciousness, it does destroy us. And so it's the recognition that we always can make another choice. That's the great news. We can always make another choice, and we can start having a totally different experience. So in his book, he talks about stages of growth, stages to our growth and unfoldment. And he states very clearly there are many stages to our growth and unfoldment. He's just kind of gotten it down to 4, which really will work for us. The 4 stages. The first one is to me, or the victim consciousness. And this is where victims believe that their life is controlled by external sources rather than by self-choice or self-responsibility. A question many victims will ask is, why does this always happen to me? And victims have a huge blame story. So the opportunity in this consciousness is to give up blame and shame. The second stage is by me, or manifestor consciousness. Now, this is a fun stage. And I know that for a lot of years after I first got into Unity Man, it was about manifestation and about, manifesting things and experiences and homes and relationships. The manifestors make use of the law of manifestation and thus feel a sense of control over their lives. We would say something like, I can use the law of manifestation to attract everything I want into my life. And the opportunity in this is to give up the sense of control and a false sense of power, because what we ultimately find was our happiness was never about those things and those things outside of us. The third stage is through me, or the channeler consciousness. Channelers are aware that we're a vehicle of spirit, and we live from this sense of ultimate surrender. God expresses in and through me. And so there's a small sense of separation there. God expresses in and through me. The opportunity here is to give up ego and a sense of separation. And then the 4th stage is as me, or the being consciousness. And what he says is these self-realized beings sense their absolute oneness with source and have no sense of an egoic self. I am one with God, which still even speaks separation. It's hard to speak non-separation language. I like just be able to say, I am Godness expressing. I am that. I am Godness expressing. There's no separation there. And the opportunity here is to experience limitless awareness. Doesn't that sound good? Limitless awareness. Now, Dr. Beckwith reminds us that the 4 stages were created as a means of offering a template of the evolution of consciousness. But like you said, he's not saying these are the only stages as we go on. But one of the things we want to recognize here is that these stages are not linear. That what we're going to find is that we're going to be in and out and through all of these stages at different times in our lives. And even at one particular moment in our life, we may be in a victim consciousness in one area, and we may be in a manifestor consciousness in another, and we may be in a channeler consciousness in another. So This isn't something that just is, oh, we're going to get to this stage 4 and that's it. That's all it's ever going to be. I kind of think if we get there, we've probably passed from this realm if we're there all the time. I personally don't know anybody who lives in stage 4 all the time. I think that there are a lot of people who, come close to that. He says that the effectiveness of your work within these stages, I'm going to tell you, and especially in this first and the second stage, is upon how willing you are to be honest with yourself. Because our ego is going to take some big hits here. And our ego is not anything that's against us. It's just, it's a programmed mind pattern. It's just a programmed mind pattern that's become very rigid. And so it's so important for us to be rawly honest with ourselves through this process. Viewing ourselves from the lens of the 4 stages, he wants also to make sure that we recognize that the idea here isn't to beat ourselves up. It's not to judge ourselves. And in fact, it's far from that. But when we are aware of, oh, yeah, I recognize that. When we're aware of something, then we have the opportunity to shift out of it. And most of the time, we're just in our lives and we're just going through every day, and we're not even aware that something is going on here that we could shift out of. So no beating ourselves up, okay? Because then you'll be a victim, right? And we don't want to be a victim, right? Okay. Stage 1, victim consciousness. The symptoms. They're characterized by a mindset that says life is being done to me by it. That something outside of me is controlling my destiny, is controlling my day, is controlling my mood. This is insidious. We're not talking about just big things, but we're talking about just the daily things. Victims often live in a mindset that, life is kind of out to get them. And their fingers are always pointed outward instead of inward. Something is doing this to me, a God, a deity, a situation, a circumstance, a person, the economy, my parents and how they treated me when I was growing up, or my school system, or my spouse that cheated on me, or whatever it is. There's always something outside that victim consciousness is blaming as to why they're stuck. Because when we're in a victim consciousness, we're stuck. We're just stuck. And we're powerless. And that is, we don't want to be in a powerless state, right? Doesn't it feel better to be in a power-filled state, a powerful state? Absolutely. Victims always do have a powerful blame story, and that's just part of it. They live practicing gossip and hanging in a frequency of fear and incessant worry, and they prepare for an unknown negative future. Reverend Chris Chenoweth tells a story about a farmer whose dad told him when he was young that he would never be a good farmer. And so this farmer then decides that he's not going to plant his crop, and when he's asked, why are you not planting a crop? Because my dad told me I was never going to be a good farmer, and so anything that I ever plant, it never grows, and everybody else's grows so much better than mine. Look at these farms around here, and all these farmers are so much better than me. And so they're, our habit, our tendency when we're in that victim consciousness is to put out into the universe the very thing we do not want. Woe is me. My life is never going to be, because you know what? My dad told me I was never going to be a good farmer. That's it. Never can be a good farmer. And it's recognizing, wow, that is not true. There is not one iota of truth to anything that anybody has said to you that has in any way, shape, or form diminished you or made you feel small. There is not an iota of truth to any of it. There's not one iota of truth to any of it. None of it. It's all opinion, and it's all perception, and you are the one who has the opportunity to say, no more, get out of here, because that is not true. And that's, where we're going to move today. He says that we are not here to live that life, but we are rather here to live a life where we're going from one level of completeness to the next level of completeness. And the great thing is we can change this victim consciousness, this victim experience. And, how many of us have said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the same experience. Anybody ever say that? Yeah. In the moment that you say that, you know what happens? There's an act of surrender, because you feel up against this wall where you cannot continue to do what you're doing, but you don't have any idea what to do. But there's an act of surrender to something greater in those moments. And that's really our first biggest movement. Now, he talks about that a victim has a hard time taking responsibility. And you'll notice today's title is Responsibility. And he uses this in his book. And what he says is that to move from a victim into empowered, we have to recognize that we do have the ability to respond. And what we tend to do when we're in a victim consciousness, a victim mode, is we react. We react out of the same thing that we've always reacted out of us, and we get what we've always gotten, right? But what he's saying is, no, that part of the movement out of the victim consciousness is to take responsibility, to take ownership, but in taking responsibility that we do have the ability to respond. And I love that. So the question becomes, does my victim story keep me stuck in some old paradigm, and does it keep me small? Does it keep me in blame or shame? Does it keep me comparing myself to others, and in that I'm shrinking back? Or do we allow whatever has occurred in our lives to be an impetus for the greater expression that just is desiring to emerge as us? Because that's always our opportunity. I promise you, it's always our opportunity. There's never a time when it's not our opportunity. And as I've always said, don't not feel, that's probably not proper English, but what is there for you to feel? We just don't want to live in it. We don't want to, put the stakes down and live with that. Let yourself feel it. But then it's time to start moving. So one of the things that I recognize is that our victim stories comes down to how we compare ourselves to others and to others' life. And this shows up, in a couple of ways. We can look at other people's lives and we can go, oh, look at how good their lives are. Their lives are so much better than mine, or we perceive that is. Or we look at how somebody is being and, oh, look at them. They always know the right thing to say. They're so spiritual. They got it all together. They probably never have a bad day or even say a bad word. Or you might look at someone and think, oh my gosh, they're so strong. They just have everything, and then we go, and look at, they have a great relationship, blah, 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 blah. And then what do we do in those moments that we're saying that? If we're saying it from a place of empowerment, how wonderful that is. But so much of the time we're saying it from a place of disempowerment. We're saying it from a place of, and I am not, and I don't have any of that, and I don't have any of that, and I'm not, because they just had everything they needed handed to them, and I didn't, and yeah, exactly, and so, when we're coming from that place, and because we'll say they didn't have the life experience that they had, so it's easy for them. I deserve to own my pain story and to tell it over and over and over again, because people need to know my woeful journey. And what I do know is that when you tell your woeful journey over and over and over again, you find that you have your audience starts to get a little bit smaller, correct? Yeah, especially if you're telling it from a place of just staying there and not even desiring to have a different experience. Or we even make someone else's success our victim story. Well, they were born with money. I wasn't. So that's why, the reason that I'm not affluent is because they have money. Or, well, look at her. She's got everything all together. Of course, all the guys are going towards her. She's the reason I don't have any guys in my life. I mean, it's crazy. But we actually make other people's success things reasons why we're not, we don't have it together. And the victim story, my friends, is ultimately an excuse. And it absolutely is an excuse. And the thing about this is that comparison can be good for us if we're in an empowered state and we're wanting to emulate something. But I'm going to tell you, when you're comparing yourself and you're shrinking, when you're pulling back, when you're feeling less than, when you're in that comparison state, get out of it! Because that is only going to take you further down the rabbit hole. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of us end up. We were talking in our women's group the other night, and I don't remember what was said, but somebody said something about an experience in her life. And I knew she just kind of felt like she was the only one. And so I said, raise your hand if you've ever thought that or felt that. And almost every person in the room raised their hand. And the thing is that most of us walk around with some sense of not enoughness, with some sense of not worthy, of a sense of lack of self-value and self-love. And you would be surprised, because you can look at somebody and think, man, they never think that. They never have those feelings. And I can almost promise you that they do, because our culture has set us up with that. We have been programmed in a way that we have been set up with that. But the great news is that it's time to start telling a different story. It's time to quit comparing ourselves to others in a way that diminishes us. And it's time for us to recognize our own value and our worth. And the number one step in that is awareness. And awareness of when we're telling that story inside ourselves. And how do we know we're telling the story? How do we know? Exactly. We feel it. It's like a heavy something just went blump. And that in and of itself is sometimes what just, our body language kind of shrinks. Our shoulders might shrug a little. We might, put our head down. Well, our body language will tell us, and the feelings will tell us that, ding, 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 ding. I'm shrinking back. Ding, 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 ding. I'm comparing myself. Ding, 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 ding. I'm not remembering who I am. Because in those moments, you're not. You're not remembering who you are. But the more that we become aware and have something in place. I've shared before that for me, I use a trigger, and my trigger is my thumb and my finger. And one of the things that I would do is that I would just go apart, and I would squeeze my finger and my thumb, and I would just say, just let your light shine, just be yourself. Let your light shine, be yourself. Let your light shine, be yourself. And I would release. And then I would go back, let your light shine, be yourself. Let your light shine, be yourself. Till today, when I do that, it's an immediate reaction, and it'll immediately help me to go, oh yeah, that's right. I know who I am. And it's important to have some things in place when you start to feel the awareness that, I'm shrinking. I'm shrinking. Something's making me feel small here. Okay. And it's going to take practice. And it's going to take doing it over and over and over again. But it is so important that we do this, because the reality, you guys, is you are so much more, every single one of us. By virtue of the fact that you exist, you are so worthy. You have such incredible value. By virtue of the fact that you exist, you are imbued with all that God is. There's nothing in you that is anything but magnificent and glorious. And it's only the mind, the thinking, the thoughts that have told you anything else. And who's in charge of your mind? Okay. Who's in charge of your mind? Right. I'm not. I am. My mind. And we are. And we have to be the ones to step up and to say, mind, you mind me. Because I'm going to tell you a different story. And I'm going to tell you the true story. I'm going to tell you what's real. You know, on the white stone thing, one of my words that came was release. And whoa, man, I have stepped into a year of release. And so part of what I'm releasing are papers. And so I was going through a class that I was in a number of years ago, and I was reading this, and this was so impactful to me because as I was reading it, we had to write how we were feeling about ourselves at that time. And I've shared with you before my struggle has always been with not enoughness. You know, I don't feel like I'm enough. I'm strong enough. I am educated enough. I know the Bible well enough. I don't feel like I'm enough. And then we had to write as like a third person, years later, looking at me. And so here's something like that I had to write. It was sad that Sue never knew how amazing she was. That she never really got that she was a magnificent creation of God, imbued with all the power and the glory and creativity and beauty and strength of God. It was sad that Sue's light was diminished. And the only reason that it was diminished was because of what she thought about herself. And in those moments, honestly, you guys, in those moments of reading that, I mean, something just went and I said, no more. I'm done. Because you know what that is? It's an excuse. You know, poor me. I don't feel like I'm enough because, I'm not educated enough and because, I don't look as nice as the other girls and because, they're excuses. And it's time, you guys, for us to put those excuses aside and to stand in the knowing of who and what we truly are. That we are literally godness expressing. Gene Houston calls it our goddedness. It's our goddedness. And that there is not a single one of us in this room that is anything less than absolute magnificence, and you are totally and completely worthy. You are totally and completely valued. You are totally and completely loved. And there's not one thing that you have to do differently today in order to be, because that's the nature of God. You are God expressing. Think about that. You are imbued with all the qualities, the power, the magnificence of God in this moment. And I think sometimes, would we ever look at somebody else and say these awful things to them? We wouldn't. And would we ever think, to look at God, if God manifests, which God is manifesting in each and every one of us, and say, you are not worthy. You've messed up. And no, we would never do that. And I wish that there was somebody in my life who had some strong spiritual power a long time ago that just came up and got in my face and said, get over yourself. Get over it. Because you have great things to do in your life. And you need to get over yourself. You need to get over all those ideas that you have about why you're not good enough, why you're not enough, why people around you are more than you are. You need to get over all that stuff because you are enough. You are good enough. You're magnificent. You're powerful. And you are. And it's time to get over yourself. And more now than ever, you guys. More now than ever. We've got to get out of this costume that we're wearing, these masks that we have on. And we have to allow ourselves to be the expression of God that we came here to be as us. And it's going to be different for everybody. Richard has come as this magnificence of music. And Russ and you guys have just, John, and you just stepped into it. And they bless our world with this magnificence of music so authentically through themselves. Yeah. And Kenneth has come with this wonderful ability to be able to teach. And I love how he says, I just want to get you excited about your life. Now imagine if Kenneth said, I'm not good enough. I can't be teaching people. I've had all these experiences in my life that, my goodness, if they knew all these experiences, they wouldn't want me to be teaching them. I'm not going to tell them the experiences, but I know them. And the thing is that, and that's the point though, is there's nothing you've ever done in your life. There's nothing you've ever said. There's nothing that can keep you from expressing the glory of your godness, the magnificence of your being, except for you, except for your mind. So you need to make your mind you and tell it to stop it and start really standing in your value and your worth. Start recognizing, knowing who you are and what it is that you're bringing to all that is right now. And you know what? These seats should be filled, you guys. These seats should be filled to overflowing because of this message. And you know what? Part of that's going to be us getting over ourselves and getting out there and telling people about this ministry here and about this message and inviting people to come in and seeing with our consciousness a vision of people sitting in these seats because they love that their lives are changing and they're remembering who they are. And every time one of us wakes up and we say, no more. I am that I am, and I am all that I am, and I'm claiming it. We give other people the unconscious permission to do the same thing. And so, gosh, you guys, your job this week is just go love yourself. Just love yourself. Look in the mirror, tell yourself you're fabulous. When those things come up, just tell them to get out, that they have no power over you. Get out. You have no power over me. All those old thoughts and ideas, no more. Because I'm ready to let my big, bright, brilliant beam of radiant light shine, right? Amen. So we're going to close with our affirmation again. So if you will join me and let's say it with some power, okay? I am available to more good than I've ever experienced, imagined, manifested, or expressed before. And so it is. And I'm going to invite you to say, and I am enough. Look at somebody and tell them, you are enough. Somebody else. You are enough. And then let's tell each other, let your big, bright, brilliant beam of radiant light shine. Amen. Namaste. Namaste.